What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be working on the flatbed bumper pull, changing out the drum brakes and the brake pads on it, and I'm going to show you guys how to do one real quick. So this is a 7K axle, got 9/16 studs on here. The old brakes finally wore all the way out. The pad was almost touching the magnet was almost touching these studs on the old ones. So I went and picked up a 4 set of drums and brakes and new bearings and everything. So I'm going to show you guys how to change these out. So I use this little bearing packer, which I've used in previous videos, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to pick one of these up. But basically, you fill this bottom deal up with grease, put your bearing in there. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. But basically, you just push down on this knob and it packs your bearing for you. You can see right there. So you'll take your big bearing, make sure you put it in the right way. The taper goes down, drop it in there. Then you'll want to take your new seal, and it goes just like this. And I use this seal driver. If you don't have one, you can just tap around it with the hammer. But basically this, I don't have my camera holder with me, but basically this just goes down on it once you get it started with your hammer. Then you just hit it and knock it down flush with this edge. So now that your seal's installed, you want to make sure you don't get any grease in here. If you do, get some brake clean and wipe it out. And then I'm going to flip this over, put a little grease in the middle of it, and pack this small front bearing. Little bearing, and it's going to go in there when I get this full of grease. But first, we're going to get some grease here. I just get a rubber glove. Pack some of this in there. And take this bearing. Or make sure you have a couple rolls of shop towels, because this gets pretty messy. Make sure that gets seated down there, and then this drum's ready to put on. Okay, so once you get your tires off, you're going to want to knock these caps off. And I use a rubber mallet, just kind of I got new ones, so I'm not reusing those, but I'll probably keep them just in case I need one. Then you're going to get a flathead screwdriver, and in here there's a little keeper. You're going to want to pop it off. Which it looks like that. And it only goes on the outside. If you put it behind the bolt, you're going to screw up your axle spindle. So make sure you put it on last, and I'll show you putting it on when we put the new one on. But you gotta pop that off, and sometimes those are loose enough, but this one's not. I'm just gonna pull this axle nut off here. Then you're going to pull a flat washer out. Now you won't get new nuts and washers with your kit, at least I didn't, so I got to reuse those. But I did get new bearings, so now there's a bearing in there that's going to fall out when I remove this. So once you pull your drum off, you can see just how wore down this set is, because it's almost touching these studs compared to how deep that new one is. Then you're going to pull your brake assembly off. So it's just 5 9/16 bolts. You'll undo those and cut the wires on the back going to the trailer brakes. So I'm going to zip that off. So once you get them bolts off, you can pull that off and cut those wires, and we'll use those wires on the new set. So the next thing you want to do is you want to clean the spindle up real good, get all the old grease off and clean it up where the new seal is going to ride. And you just want to look at it, make sure there's no gouges in it or anything. There's a little bit right there where that old seal was, but mainly where the shaft is here. Make sure your threads are good, not all stripped or eat up. And then we'll be ready to put the new brake assembly on. So this axle has the greasable bearings, and you don't want to over grease these things, because what will happen is if you start greasing them too often and too much, it'll get past the seal and actually get in the brake lining, and you'll get grease all over that and it'll just ruin it. So I don't really like to use these a whole lot. That's why I pack all my bearings. I may put a few pumps in it ever so often, but just don't over grease it. So before you put your new brake assembly on, now these are side Pacific, so you want to make sure you put the left hand pair on the left hand side and the right hand pair on the right hand side. And usually you can look on a sticker and it'll tell you LH or RH, like right there. So the magnet goes facing down. Really only one way you can put these on to get the bolts to line up, but it'll go on there just like that. But first I'm gonna tie in these wires. It doesn't matter which one you put to what on here, so I'm gonna do these wires up real quick. Alright, so once you get your brake wires hooked up, you can then put it on. Yeah, I know I'm using the world's worst connectors. These are junk. Don't ever use them because they fail all the time. But I dropped my soldering iron the other day and broke it, so I'm getting a new one. And I want to get these hooked up because I got to use this trailer, but I like to solder these. So when I go get another soldering iron, I'm going to cut these off and solder them, heat shrink it. But I'm going to use these for the time being. But don't buy these and plan on using it for permanent, because they fail very quickly. Alright, once you get these tightened, you can then put the drum on, and don't do what I just did and let that wire get caught behind that nut right there and strip off the insulation. About broke the wire. But anyway, so that's how it should look. Now we're ready to put the drum on. I'll leave my front bearing in there. I'm going to kind of just press this up and on there. Make sure my bearing gets good and tight up against the race. Some excess grease will probably come out here on you, so that's why I just hold a paper towel over it like that. Now I'm going to clean up my old washer and nut and retaining clip and put it on. Alright, so once you get them cleaned up, make sure your bearing doesn't fall out. And you're going to put your washer on. And you're going to put the nut on and tighten it up. Now you don't want to get it too tight, but tight enough that you can still turn this by hand. So once you get that tight, just make sure you can still turn it by hand okay. And there'll be a little bit of drag on here, but I can turn it pretty easily. So basically just hand tight, and then maybe like an 1/8 or 1/4 of a turn with your wrench. But just make sure you can still turn it. If you tighten it too tight and you can't turn this by hand, you need to back it off. So then we'll put the retaining clip on, and it goes on one way. It goes toward these little cleat things, go facing the nut. So you want to find the flat spot, and it literally just snaps on there. Just like so. Then I'll take my flathead screwdriver and tap it on the rest of the way. So I just tap this on with the rubber mallet, then install this plug and reinstall your tire, and you're good to go. So there's probably some other ways to do this, but this is just how I do it. It's worked for me. When I put this tire back on, I'll torque the lug nuts down, drive it for a little bit, and then you want to come back and check your axle nut after a while. And to do that and make sure it's still tight enough and didn't get too loose, you jack your trailer up and you can grab your tire on the top and bottom and kind of just wiggle it like that. And if you can move it a little bit and you can feel it play in it, you need to tighten that axle nut up some, but if it has no movement, then you're most likely good. So here's an example. This back left one's one that I've over greased in the past, and you can see the grease build up on the pads. And this was the only one like this, and you can see it's got some on the magnet. And if you look here in the rotor, you can see some grease in there. So that's why I kind of quit using those and just pack them like we did with the bearing packer, and maybe just a couple pumps every, I don't know, depending on how often you use your trailer, maybe a couple pumps every like 3 to 4 months. But yeah, that's why you'll lose a brake assembly because of that.